Yep. No, it's awfully interesting to hear about that. And Bill, I've always wondered what your middle initial stood for. So Walter, I'll start calling you Walt in my spare time. So we're
Go ahead.
we're at 5:55 p.m. and I wanted to kind of go ahead and get started by sharing my screen, so I can make sure I properly introduce people today, and so hopefully, I don't want to do that. I want to present. Here we go. Welcome everyone to Husky Bites. It is Thanksgiving week, and we have a very special evening planned tonight. I want to thank sponsors, the Seibold family and Todd Howe. Thank you so much. As you know, we do live stream this on Facebook. Just go ahead and get on Facebook and search for Michigan Tech's College of Engineering, and we should be streaming live. I wanted to start by conducting a quick poll so we could figure out who's joining us today. And so in just a moment, there you go. You can fill this out and go ahead and click the best answer, because we're all curious to see who's with us this evening. We now have 127 attendees, Marty, and we're not quite on the hour. So we have a lot of alumni. 62% of the people here are alumni. 15% of our attendees are Michigan Tech faculty and staff. We have some curious people, some family of current and future students. We have Michigan Tech students and high school students. But predominantly, we're about 64% alumni. So thank you. It's good to know your audience. So that's your audience, Marty, so far. I'm going to stop sharing, and then I'm going to go ahead and introduce my co-host this evening. And while I'm doing that, Marty, please feel free to share your screen so you can get your first slide loaded.
Okay.
So it is my pleasure and honor this evening to introduce co-host Bill Predebon, who will introduce our special guest speaker this evening. William Walter Predebon is the JS Endowed Department Chair of Mechanical Engineering Mechanics. He has a distinguished career that began with a Bachelor of Science at Notre Dame. He then earned his master's and PhD all in mechanical engineering at Iowa State, where he was alarmed by the speed limit, apparently, which was 75 miles per hour. He then spent his next 5 years at the Army Research Lab blowing things up, and that'll have to be a story for another day. He did this on a secret island in 10-foot concrete walls, 10 feet deep concrete walls. After that, apparently he joined Michigan Tech as an assistant professor, where he distinguished himself for his in many ways, but especially as a faculty member teaching students. His favorite course is dynamics. He will probably relay this, but Marty Lagina was one of his research students in his lab. So Bill became chair of what we call MEME, which is Mechanical Engineering Mechanics, in 1997. This is his 23rd year as chair and 45th year as a faculty member. And so with that, Bill, I'm going to turn it over to you to introduce our special speaker. And thank you so much for being chair and for all your work for Michigan Tech.
Well, thank you, Janet, for that introduction. So it's my pleasure to introduce my friend Marty Lagina. Marty received his Bachelor of Science in Mechanical Engineering from Michigan Tech in 1977. That was a few years after I joined, and I was fortunate to have him work with me on a research project in his senior year. He then earned a Juris Doctorate from the University of Michigan in 1982. After graduation, he worked for the Amoco Production Company in Traverse City as a petroleum engineer. See, that's an example. Mechanical engineering can do anything. I don't know what that is. Can you hear that?
No, it's only in your head, Bill.
Yeah. Anyway. So
I always said that chemical engineers could do anything.
He then worked as an independent petroleum engineer doing consulting work soon after that. for various Michigan corporations, doing analysis of producing reservoirs and as an expert witness. In 1981, he was the founder, president, and CEO and majority owner of Terra Energy, which is a Michigan oil and gas exploration company. So he soon sold that to CMS Energy Corporation in 1995. At the time of the sale of Terra, it was the largest operator of atrium shale gas in the state of Michigan, with gross operator production of approximately 165 million cubic feet per day. That was amazing. Terra designed and implemented many of the technical advantages which enabled shale gas to be commercially viable major resource for the state of Michigan and the United States. In 1995, he became a consultant to the same company, CMS, and a member of their board of directors. In 2000, he founded and is the owner of the award-winning Villa Marty and Marty Vineyards Winery. Great wine. In 2006, he founded and is the CEO of Heritage Sustainable Energy, which has built and operates for utility scale wind farms in the state of Michigan. And in aggregate has installed a capacity of 137.5 megawatts. Heritage is the largest Michigan-based developer of utility scale wind farms. In 2008, he's been engaged in the 225-year-old treasure hunt that some of you are aware of, and the mystery of the Oak Island in Nova Scotia. It's featured, as many of you may know, in the History Channel series, The Curse of Oak Island. He and his brother and a partner are leading it. Marty is an active member and past chairman of several boards in the state of Michigan. So with that, I'd like to introduce Marty.
Well, thank you, Bill. Much appreciated. Two things spring to mind after that introduction. One is I'm not so sure how lucky you were to have me as your research assistant, but okay. And the other is I don't think I have to do my presentation because I think you already did it for me. But thank you very much. Anyway,
well, you have such a great career.
Thank you, Bill. Yeah. Well, we're going to go through it a little bit, but with the focus being on what Michigan Tech had to do with it. So I am an alum, of course, and I was asked by Bill, who, by the way, is a tremendous asset for Michigan Tech. I've known him for a long time. He is just an absolute institution up there, and the college is very lucky to have him. I was on the board for 8 years, and the interaction with Bill is always first class. Anyway, and Janet, of course, recently got to know you, and you know, Michigan Tech always has quality educators. So anyway, I was asked to more or less, you know, sort of do a commercial for Michigan Tech, and I said, sure, I would. But it turns out I didn't have to be prompted because upon reflection, Michigan Tech had a huge influence on my life and allowed me to do many of the things that I subsequently did. So I'll just go through it quickly. And then at the end, I was told that everybody else who's done this is a professor and they actually do something substantive. So I have to do something substantive. So I decided I would use the sort of bully pulpit and opine on where I think the country should go with energy. Anyway, so why did I choose Michigan Tech? Actually, let me back up. Winning the lottery on day one. You know, I've been very, very lucky. And what I mean by that is the best of luck is to be born to caring, loving parents in a great area to grow up. And of course, I'm a Youper. Grew up in Iron Mountain, Kingsford. So, I mean, I really did win the lottery on day one. I won't go into my childhood, but it was great. So why did I choose Michigan Tech? I was always going to be a lawyer. But somebody, and I believe it was my father, gave me an excellent advice and said, look, you know, if you're going to be a lawyer, why don't you get a technical education first? Because there aren't that many lawyers who have that. And so I went to Michigan Tech. It turned out to be a great decision. So I'll go to my next slide. This is just for no reason other than to show that idyllic childhood. There I am with my brother and our dog and a basketball growing up in the youth plant. That's all that slide. Okay, so I went to Michigan Tech and it turns out I loved it. It was fun. It was exciting. I learned an enormous amount. and I tried to summarize it here. What I learned at Michigan Tech, generally as an engineer, and I think any multidisciplinary, Bill, as an engineer, you learn the science behind how things work, which is immensely valuable. You learn how to analyze and solve a real world problem, and that's something Michigan Tech is still excelling at. And also I learned to know what I didn't know. In other words, that there was a lot of disciplines out there, you can't know everything. And here I'll do my first little soapbox. I wish a lot of our politicians knew that third one. In other words, know what you don't know. I just say this and I'll say it again later. You see all kinds of politicians making energy policy. And I think we all should create a law that you can't do that unless you've taken and passed thermodynamics. You can't be involved in energy policy because, you know,
you have my support, Marty.
Yes. Why don't we have a rule on that, Bill? You could sign up all those politicians. Anyway, so that's that. These are the things I learned. Oh yeah, and I also learned how to drink beer. Here I am with my my buddies. You can see we all have a bottle or a glass of beer, and just to note that house that we're sitting there, this front steps, was condemned the year after we graduated. That doesn't matter. That was just a graduation.
Was it something that you guys did that condemned the house, or was it just an utterly condemnable house?
Was unbelievable. That we had reached the conclusion that the house had so many coats of paint inside that it was the paint holding the house together, because we used to try and find studs in that house to hang pictures and we could never find a stud. It was just, look, I could go on and on about that. In the mornings, the toilets would have about a 1/4 inch of ice on them, because the heater could, which was quite a surprise when you went to the bathroom in the morning. But anyway, okay. So this is what, and I only figured this out after you guys asked me to do it, but this is kind of how I made decisions. If an opportunity comes along and it looks interesting and fun, and it's legal and ethical, or even better, it's a good thing, good thing for society, and there's a good chance to make some money, well, do it. And that's kind of what I did. So law school, this is the next stage for me. I had worked for Amoco, as Bill said, as a petroleum engineer, and it was easy to become a petroleum engineer with a background from Michigan Tech, because the sciences and the physics and the dynamics and the statics are all the same. Then there's the unique things to the discipline. So I went to law school because it checked the boxes. It seemed like it'd be interesting. I'll leave fun aside for a second. Looked like it might help make some money, and it certainly was legal and ethical. But because of Michigan Tech, and I mean this sincerely, it was also fun, because I was different than 99% of the law students there. I had a technical education. I already had a career. So I had none of the pressure that law students that you see on TV, these law students, competing and driving themselves crazy and having nervous breakdowns and stuff. I didn't have any of that. I actually had fun in law school because it was a lot easier because of my Michigan Tech education.
Anything is easier than earning an engineering degree.
Yeah, well, that's true too. I mean, there was a lot of reading and there was some pressure and stuff, but, and don't get me wrong, I learned a lot in law school too, which was great. But it was Michigan Tech that allowed that to happen, really. And while I was there, I started drilling my own oil wells, because that checked all those same boxes. So here we go. There's my first office. There I am at law school. You can see that giant photocopier in the middle of the room. I was immensely proud of that. Housekeeping, I wasn't so proud of, but it just goes to show that if you have the knowledge and are willing to try, you can start with virtually anything. I think that picture proves it. Oh, shoot. Gotta go back.
That is one of the messiest offices I think I've ever seen.
Hang on, I'll get it.
So Sue could still launch the poll. There we go. Yeah.
There we go. All right, here we go. There's my office. And
there we go.
I'll tell you a little story first, real quick. Like, So actually put together oil deals, and I worked with Craig Tester, another Michigan Tech grad, and we managed to raise the money, and we drilled 14 dry holes in a row, and it was awful. It's a lot worse losing someone else's money than losing your own. Any entrepreneur will tell you that. But anyway, we persevered, and then here is our first well, and here we are testing it. We were incredibly happy with this well. This is the gas coming off an oil well, naturally flowing. And remember I said things should be fun? Well, here we are. If you can see in the picture, those are sticks, nice long sticks. And at the end is a poor, unfortunate hot dog. So we decided to cook our hot dogs on that flame just for fun. And seriously, we did, because there I am.
And you ate them.
Yeah, yes, we did. We ate those hot
Are
dogs.
you in Michigan?
Yes, that well is in Michigan near Gaylord.
Mm.
And that put us on the map. That was a very nice well, produced a lot of oil and associated gas. But the idea was we were having fun with it too. So we did that for a while. But then after finding some conventional oil and gas, we got into shale. And here's our first quiz, which I guess you're going to administer, right?
Sue will do that. Yep.
Who's
All
going to
right.
do it?
I'm going to read it off.
So here's the
So
quiz. Are you going to read it?
in which state did the fracking/shale technology that made the United States energy independent for the first time in many, many years first occur? So there's 4 choices: Oklahoma, Texas, Pennsylvania, and New Mexico. All right, so lots of people are voting for Pennsylvania. Second runner-up, well, it's pretty much nobody really. Well, Oklahoma, second runner-up, Oklahoma, third runner-up, Texas. Oh, Marty, this sounds like a really hard quiz.
It is, because it was a trick question. Sorry about that. I couldn't resist. It was Michigan.
None of the above? You didn't
None
even
of-
have a none of the above
No, it was
selection?
a trick question. If I had none of the above, people would have picked it. No, it was Michigan, and it was a lot of Michigan Tech engineers. The technology that allowed gas, in this case, to be released from shale was developed in Michigan. A lot of us weren't smart enough to take it to the rest of the country, but the technology, the fracking, and even the horizontal drilling and all that was all first developed here. Others have claimed it. People in Texas have claimed it, but it really did happen in Michigan. And again, like I say, it was the education at Michigan Tech that allowed us to do it. And in passing, I will note that when we were drilling the deeper formations, I remember when I worked for Amoco, we'd drill through the Antrim shale that Bill mentioned, and every once in a while it would burn the rig down. I mean, that happened 1 or 2 times. So I remember asking the other people, well, why don't we try and produce that? And they said, it won't, it doesn't produce. And that was the conventional thinking. But a host of engineers figured out that wasn't the case. Okay, so then after that, I had built an oil and gas company. I was 40 years old, had an offer to sell it, so it was time to move on. I became convinced that renewable energy was the way of the future, and it checked the boxes for sure: interesting, fun, ethical, and looked like there might be some money in it. And
You didn't know your rules yet, though.
no, I didn't know my rules, but subconsciously I must have, right? Because I was making decisions this way. And that's clearly an oversimplification, right? Because I mean, there are other things. You only have so much time. You know, there's risk involved, there's family involved, there's all those things. But in general, I think that's how I made my decisions. I really do. But you're right. It wasn't until you kind of asked me how I did it that I decided. But that's how it happened.
Cool.
So why not give renewable energy a try? I figured I had the skills to do it. By that point, it was a lot like conventional energy, only sort of different. So we did. We built, those are the first 2 utility size, well, not the first 2. They were sure the bigger. The ones at the Straits of Mackinac were the first 2. These were the next 2 in the state, and they were 4 or 5 times the size of that. That's near McBain in southern Michigan. I just show you that. This just shows the size of this is a portion of the nacelle, the piece that goes up in the air. That was the name of my company. Heritage still is.
You know, they're always so much bigger than you think they are. When you get up close to them, they're just so big.
they're enormous and they're getting bigger and bigger because the efficiency has to do with the capture cross section of the blade. So whatever you can get, and of course it's an R squared relationship, right? So the bigger that rotor is, the more energy you can capture. And it shows that the farmers really like them. They are not without controversy. Some people hate wind turbines, and we've taken a lot of flack with that. Farmers in general love them because they get income, and when the machine is up and running, they farm right up to the tower. I mean, occasionally we're cleaning manure off the towers because they're spreading it right next to them. But, so they go real well with farming, maybe not as well if it's densely populated area. Anyway, we built a bunch of wind farms. And here I am, currying favor with a politician, which is my segue. That's Carl Levin. You probably remember him. He was senator of Michigan for a long time. And of course, he seems to have our next topic, which is a bottle of wine in his hand. I don't know how he would have got that. The wine. Okay. Got real interested in wine because, Bill, I share the Italian heritage with you. And when I was growing up, wine was part of everything. My grandfather, even though he was disabled from the mines, chiseled a wine cellar by hand with a pick out of granite underneath their house. My brother and I used to go down there because it was just a magical place. And my grandmother had prosciutto and things curing down there, and it smelled beautiful. So it was kind of nel sangue. It was in the blood. So,
where was this?
This was in well, my grandmother lived in Iron Mountain, Michigan, just in the UP.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, she could grow anything, absolutely anything. You know, when she died, she had an orange tree growing in the corner of the house, just outside. and she was going to get oranges off it. But anyway, incredible amount of knowledge. And my grandfather was sort of the leader of the Italian community there, all miners. And they had to make wine. They just had to. That was the deal. You get kicked out if you're Italian and you don't make wine. So
they would grow their own grapes. I mean, they would.
No, they couldn't. Okay. Not even my grandmother could pull that off. But my grandfather, and Robert Mondavi's father, Cesare Mondavi, were really good friends. And that's how the Mondavi thing started. They were selling grapes. So my grandfather imported train card loads of grapes from the Mondavis, who they're both from a town called Sassoferrato.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, in Le Marche. So anyway, wine was just a big part of it.
So he was pulling in the same grapes Mondavi was into Iron Mountain.
Well, Mondavi's father was selling grapes. That's how the Mondavi family got started. He was selling grapes to all his Italian buddies because you were allowed to make your own wine even during Prohibition, or maybe you weren't allowed in the technical sense, but they did it. So, well, I know what it was. You weren't allowed to make wine, but you were allowed to ship grapes. So
that's hilarious.
We'd all gather and they'd unload the train and make wine. Anyway, that's enough of that. So when I got a chance and realized grapes would grow near Traverse City, I built this. And it's obviously designed to be, very like an Italian villa. And I won't dwell on this. Bill, you're correct, though. I will shamelessly say we do make really good wines. And the reason, and I'll tie it to Michigan Tech again, is because I left out the sort of broad rubric that Michigan Tech teaches you how to think. And you see those white sort of shelters in the back, that's part of our vineyard, because in there, this is a picture in early spring underneath those canopies. And what I and other people realized was that we were on the same latitude as southern France, Bordeaux, France, in fact, and Lombardia, Italy. But we don't have the warmth. We have the same amount of daylight, but not the warmth. So the shelters are designed to increase the growing season. And I'll just show you this in passing, but it is remarkable, I think. This picture was taken on the same day as that picture outside. So you can see the vines out here are basically still dormant, but inside they're growing. And that same phenomena happens in the fall. So, our grapes think they're in Italy, Bill.
Do you keep them in the bubble all summer?
All summer. We only speak Italian in there too. No English inside. The grapes have to-
Bella, it's bello, bella, bello.
Bella, sì. Yes, that's all we speak. Solo.
And the name of the vineyard is Mary
Mary
Vineyards?
Vineyards, which is named after my grandmother because she was a phenomenal woman. Mari. So anyway, that's,
Bella.
yes, che bello, bellissimo. Okay, so this is another shot. It looks over the bay. It's a pretty place. It's got a nice view. But I wanted to make red wines because that's what I was sort of weaned on. And so we do, and I think we make the best red wines in Michigan. And anybody watching this, you're invited to come up. Even though things are difficult during COVID, we're still making really good wine. So that's that. So we made wine. One other thing about that building, because I have gotten very serious about CO2 and climate issues, I do believe it's a serious issue. That big structure you saw there is 100% carbon dioxide neutral, because most of it's underground. This is a shot underground in the tunnels, and we have no HVAC down there. Good old Mother Earth keeps that at the right temperature for grapes all year round, for wine, for aging wine. And up above, we have a windmill we bought from Traverse City Light and Power, just a standalone one that provides all the electricity. And then the heat is from burning dead ash that the emerald ash borer on the same property killed all the ash trees. We probably, rather than let them decay, we probably have, I don't know, we probably have 7 or 10 years worth of wood. We have an exterior wood burner, highly efficient. So the whole place is carbon neutral, except for one small gas fireplace in the meeting room, and we're working on that. Anyway, this is underneath. That's what that is. And so that is a nice segue, because you probably saw there was an insignia, those keen-eyed people that are on here at the bottom of that, on the floor there.
All right, it's time for another quiz, folks.
Time for another quiz. Why don't you go ahead?
What is the document that influenced the most people in the last 250 years? The Declaration of Independence, the United States Constitution, the Bill of Rights, or Mary Trump's book? All right, and so people are voting. By the way, Marty, we have over 200 people here already. And so people, wow, this is a pretty close tie. It's a dead on between the United States Constitution and the Bill of Rights, with a close second, the Declaration of Independence.
Okay.
Very few people fell for Mary Trump's book.
Well, of course, and you know what, they're going to cotton on to this, because the answer is it was a trick question. According to me, it was the 1965 Reader's Digest, Oak Island's Mysterious Money Pit. You know, and I will say this, that I have selection bias here, but I have run into literally, I think, thousands of people who've read this article, because this was the article that Rick and I, my brother Rick, read back when we were boys. That kind of was in the back of our minds the whole time. And when Oak Island became available, well, we ended up going in and buying our way in. And so off I went and my brother and others on sort of another quest. It checked all the boxes, sort of, except for that business about making money.
Money, I was wondering about that one.
No, that, you know, I mean, yes. Is there perhaps some huge treasure there? Yeah. But people were trying for 220 years, and there's a reason they call it the money pit. Because that's where you throw the money in. But anyway, so this happened. So we were happily doing this. There's the article. You really won't believe how many people read that and how many lives that article affected. Because Dan Blankenship, for instance, read that article, packed his family up from a good paying job in Florida, went to Oak Island and never came back. And others did the same. So anyway, it's a real interesting story how that all evolved. So then we're out there and we're treasure hunting and we're trying to figure this out. Rick and I and some other people. Craig got involved early on, my partner Craig. And then along came these TV people and, you know, pitched that they wanted to photograph this. And neither Rick nor I really wanted to do that. But coincidentally, and there's several coincidences, I'll share a couple with you tonight. I was reading William Shatner's book. Of course, this is Kirk, right? And to me and Rick, Captain Kirk was just an absolute phenomenon. I know he's an actor, and I know Star Trek didn't really exist, but not to an 8-year-old boy who still lives in the back of my mind. So anyway, so I was reading his book, and in his book, yeah, there's his book. I just happened to be reading this, and we were saying no to these Hollywood people. And one of his Shatner rules is when opportunity comes by, and actually it's a very funny book if anybody wants to read it. You have to say yes, because that opens doors. Saying no to good opportunities, because you have to say no sometimes too. But saying yes to good opportunities opens doors, and you should do it. So I said yes. I called Rick. He agreed to say yes. And then this is one of the amazing coincidences. 7 years later, Bill Shatner comes to the island, and I get to be more or less friends with him. Here he is on Oak Island. He came to do a series that he was doing, and actually did a segment on Oak Island. 89 years old and still sharp as hell. But I mean, the coincidence was really astounding. So
Wait, I'm gonna ask a personal question, because I know that you and Rick were brothers, and so you probably played, Star Trek games. So which one of you was Captain Kirk?
You know what? It was like asking one of us to be the Pope. There's no way we could be Captain Kirk. That was, we might be maybe Spock, but not Kirk. No, he was just too up there. It was just a real phenomenon. I mean, we only watched 3 shows. In fact, I'll tell you a story about Bill Shatner, how quick that guy still is. He's sitting around and we're talking, and I said, I think at that time I was calling Mr. Shatner. I said, we were only allowed to watch 3 television shows when we were growing up, because my mother was big on shutting off TV. I mean, she would shut off internet, I guarantee it. But I said we watched Star Trek, and we watched The Wonderful World of Disney and Bonanza. That's all we were allowed to watch. And before I got any farther than that, he said, well, I don't know why you wasted your time on those other 2. I mean, just like that. So he's quite a guy. And it's been quite an adventure out there. Here's another. This is an engineering problem, Bill, beyond anything I've encountered. I mean, this is what historically was reported. There's booby traps. And I could go on forever. Anybody who's interested in this can, I suppose, watch the show, or we can look on the internet. There's a lot about this. But it has been searched intensely for 220 years. And so searchers themselves have left artifacts around that are ancient now. So it's really difficult to tell what happened. But I am convinced, I will say this for whoever's watching this that is into this. I thought for the longest time there was nothing on Oak Island, that it was sort of mass hysteria, but I don't think that anymore, and that's all I'm allowed to say.
That's all you're allowed to say. Ooh.
There's the island, has that triangular shaped swamp over on the right where the elephant's face is, the elephant's head there, the baby elephant, that's where the money pit is.
Yeah, it looks like an elephant. Yep.
So the money pit is where the triangle is?
No, the money pit is the white spot to the right as you're looking at it. They're right about where the elephant's eye would be, below there.
Okay.
That's where the money pit is. I mean, we can talk about this a ton. This island is fairly unique in Mahone Bay because it has a lot of elevation where none of the others do. And the geology is such that if you were going to try and hide something and dig tunnels and actually be able to do it with 400-year-old technology, this would be the place to do it, but I won't get into all that. And then, a couple interesting discoveries. You can't see this too well, but when we excavated down on the cove, we found massive, and this is a nondescript island, okay? This island has no historical significance in the written record, none. And yet there's this massive handmade wharf down there that we dug up that at this point is well below sea level, which is an interesting clue because sea level has been coming up, about a foot a century. So there's this huge wharf well below sea level that even nowadays, our dirt contractor said, even nowadays with men and equipment and everything in the world, it would be hard to build. So something massive happened, but that's all I'm going to say about that. And then there's this, because you talk about coincidences. On the right is a lead cross that was found on the island. On the left, and I swear this is true and was not manipulated, and really happened this way. My brother went to Dome, France, D-O-H-M, and went to visit because some theories are, believe it or not, crazy as it might sound, that the Knights Templar had something to do with this. And he goes to this castle that was used as a prison where they imprisoned all these Templars after the Friday the 13th, basically massacre. And these men were so desperate, but still trying to preserve their whatever faith. They actually carved into the walls, and we understand they used their teeth to do it. What they would do is they didn't have anything sharp, so they would knock out a tooth so they could.
Oh.
Yeah, I know, it's not awful. Anyway, carved into the wall is what you see there on the left. And if that isn't effectively an exact duplicate of what we found on Oak Island, I don't know what is. So we're still trying to figure that one out. And we know the lead is not from North America, by the way. All right, well, that's kind of the things I did. As I say, Michigan Tech, the education I got at Michigan Tech, and I mean this in all sincerity, really allowed all of that. I mean, I wouldn't have had the confidence to tackle these things if I didn't at least basically understand engineering, basically understand the sciences. And of course, the law was very helpful too. To understand that helps in business, of course. But those fine parents and the fine education at Michigan Tech for sure, and then later at U of M is what allowed me to do effectively whatever I wanted. I mean, I was able to do all these things at the risk of sounding like Forrest Gump. I was able to do a lot of stuff, but I was lucky. I was lucky to have those things. Okay, so all of that was sort of lighthearted. Here's energy policy according to Lagina. This is serious. I don't know people watching or how do I want to preface this? There's a lot of stuff out there about the CO2 issue and climate change and how serious the problem is. And from my standpoint, it doesn't even matter how serious the climate change portion of CO2 is. We are eventually going to have to wean ourselves, and eventually it's not that long a time, off fossil fuels. And I think there's an awful lot of data that says CO2 is an issue. Now, I'm not a climate scientist, but I buy that we should transition. And remember, I'm a guy who had it basically, allowed me to do all the things I did subsequently was because of oil and gas wells. I'm a past chairman of the Michigan Oil and Gas Association. So, and I will back up for a second. The gas from shale did allow us to basically meet the Paris Accord numbers. CO2 emissions have dropped in this country because the utilities have switched en masse from coal to natural gas, but they're not there yet. So what I'm going to show in the next couple of slides is what I think has to happen if we're really going to change this CO2 issue. If we're really going to impact it. What we've been doing is not working. So here we go. Quiz. One more time. Go ahead.
All right, we got a quiz. Which technology delivering electricity to the grid on a massive scale would reduce most CO2 emissions in the US and worldwide? So which technology? All right, A, wind power, B, nuclear power, C, solar power, D, hydropower.
Are people refusing to vote?
No, they're still voting. They're still voting. They
This is
still
good.
believe. They still believe.
believe?
So they're actually 52% nuclear power.
Oh,
Next highest is wind power at 21%, and then hydro and solar are about tied.
okay. That's actually really interesting. You can tell you're talking to a technologically oriented group because I remember, I hadn't prepared to say this, but I remember going to the premiere of An Inconvenient Truth in Traverse City. And the producer got up there and was talking about, how terrible this was, CO2 and all this. And I raised my hand and I said, well, how come in a documentary on CO2, you never even mentioned nuclear power? And he said, because we don't think that's the answer. And I said, I thought this was a documentary. And I got booed. you know, but of course, if CO2 is the issue, nuclear power has to be part of it. But that's not where I'm going with this, because it was a trick question. Remember I said, sorry, people.
You would have made students crazy, Marty.
What's that? You froze up a little.
You would have made our students crazy if you asked exam questions like this.
I know. This is totally unfair. And you know what? I can't get away with it again because they're going to know next time. But okay, so I have a lot of experience. And again, I'm going to try and state the things I know. I have a lot of experience with now putting renewable energy into the grid. And I have a lot of experience with producing conventional energy. So that's kind of what I know. And I can say this quite sure, not positive, because I'm never positive. The older I get, the more I realize that just because I'm sure doesn't make me right. But I think I'm right here. The grid ain't going to do it. The grid is the problem, not the solution. The grid doesn't even really exist in any meaningful sense. The grid is sort of a hodgepodge of, I don't know how many, thousands of different companies, all fighting for their own turf and regulated by several branches of government. And you know, having put now 5 wind farms on the grid and a couple of solar projects, I can tell you this, it is so hard to get onto the grid that the very idea that you have to connect to the grid to try and make a difference on CO2 emissions is rapidly running out of steam. And my next point, well, let me explain a little bit why. If you're trying to develop renewable power or nuclear power, or anything, you have to be next to the grid. The grid has to be upgraded to take your power. It takes 2 years even to get permission to perhaps get on the grid. Then you have to do all the upgrades. In the meantime, this problem is clicking along, and I'm going to show you what we've managed to do so far. My next point is that Elon Musk is at least partially wrong. He's been quoted as saying fuel cells are fool cells, which is, in my opinion, completely wrong. Now, I will digress and tell you that Italian guy in Chicago, Bill, who taught me a lot about business, once heard me complaining about somebody, and he said, Marty, does he cash bigger checks than you do? And I said, yeah. He said, well, maybe you ought to pay attention to that. So I can tell you for sure, Elon Musk cashes a lot bigger checks than I do. So he's done very well. And I said at least partially wrong, but you'll see why I am not a proponent of the grid, why I don't think it's going to work. Let's look at some data. Just a very couple slides. This could take hours. So here's where we get our greenhouse gas emissions, right? Okay, electricity, we'll dig down on that in a second. Transportation is what, you know, Tesla is trying to electrify that. But remember, transportation is planes, airplanes, ships, and automobiles, buses, all those things, okay? And you'll see in a second that we aren't doing so well on that. Industry, we haven't even touched. We haven't done anything for industry. You know, a little bit of it comes for electricity, but we'll talk about electricity in a second. Commercial and residential, we haven't touched. Agriculture, we haven't touched. So you look at these sectors and it doesn't look so good. Then you look at, well, where is all this energy coming from? And this is 2019, people. I mean, natural gas, petroleum, coal is the bulk of it. All emit CO2. Now, natural gas push coal down to that small piece, but we need to make this pie look a lot less like Pac-Man eating a green slice there, and more like something different. So there's that. But then the next 2 slides are the most telling. Here's where U.S. electricity comes from. Very recently, it's getting better, okay, but we've been at this wholeheartedly for many years, and you can still see that 30, 40, well more than half is still coming from fossil fuels, 23% still from coal. So when somebody plugs in their Tesla, and I'm not saying it's bad, it's a step in the right direction, but they're still burning coal. It's just that the emissions are in a different spot, and they're still burning lots of natural gas. Now, nuclear, as some of the people voted for, is doing great. If CO2 is the issue, nuclear is great. But this is a problem. This is after we've worked on the grid for a long time. And look at this slide. This is from the government. So this is gigatons, I believe, of CO2. And look at that graph. I mean, and then it's projected well out to, well, a long ways, 2050. I mean, basically, we haven't done a thing. I mean, we've cut it down a little bit, but if CO2 is the crisis of our times, this is not a good looking graph. So what would Lagina do? I want to give you a backup first. It's interesting that solar didn't come out very well in the poll because solar has reached the point, so is wind, but wind is a lot harder to cite. There's a lot of pushback on wind. Wind is going to play a piece, and what I'm about to show is that, especially if we go offshore, but I'm not going to talk about wind too much right now. Just solar has come down in price so much that the possibility of using the sun to produce an alternative fuel is now quite practical. And by that, I mean this. You can now, economically, it's getting close to the price of gasoline when you figure efficiencies in, which goes way beyond what I want to talk about tonight. But you take the sun, you go through solar panels, you put the electricity into an electrolyzer, you add water on this side, you break apart the molecule, you get H2 and O2. O2 is a byproduct in this sense, but it can be used for lots of things. So I show it going off into a tank. You take the H2, put it into that car right there, nice little car. You get the O2 back from the air, you put the molecule back together, and it's an exothermic reaction. And in particular, if you do it through a fuel cell, it's about 60% efficient. And I would love to debate the battery people on this because they say, oh, 60%. Batteries are 95. Well, yeah, but where's the electricity coming from, et cetera, et cetera. And at Michigan Tech, that 40% that's missing is heat. In an electric car, it now has, yes, it's free. An electric car has two.
We like heat.
Yes, you do like heat. No, if you look at the mileage on all the electric vehicles and look what they'll really make, say at Michigan Tech during the winter, you got to cut it in half because they're using a lot of that electricity to heat the car. And we all know, or probably know, that electrical resistance heating is about the worst thing you can do with electricity. That's going backwards. So anyway, this can be done, in my opinion, at a scale large enough to change the whole thing around. And it goes like this. There's the resource. That's the United States. Now, it's a lot of land, okay? If you went all solar and you produced hydrogen and then distribute it through the country, and remember, there's a couple key things that are really kind of neat about this. One is you'd hit every segment in Pac-Man there. Hydrogen as a fuel can be used for industrial processes. You can heat your house with it. You can certainly run any kind of transportation with it, including airplanes. So you can absolutely shut down CO2 emissions from that whole circle, that whole pie chart, if this could be done at scale. Now, at scale, I did some calculations. You're talking about 8%, 8 of the land mass of the United States. Now, that is a very big number, okay? But if we get away from the grid, now you could cite these things where they make sense from a land use standpoint. By way of example, just the Bureau of Land Management has almost twice as much acres under management that would be required to power all segments, all 100 quads of energy for the entire United States. But here's where it gets even better. If you look at the world, the United States actually is not very resource rich in this particular resource. I mean, it's pretty good. The desert Southwest is great. And honestly, solar works because I have solar farms, even in the sort of light yellow. It works, just not as good. But look at Africa, look at Australia, look at China. Africa, in my opinion, if I was policymaker, if I was king, I wouldn't develop the United States grid in Africa. It's a disaster, and it will always be. Whereas if you could put hydrogen plants at scale, you could create all kinds of high-paying jobs. You could take Africa, maybe I'm being Pollyanna, out of poverty. And, everybody always says, the naysayers about, about the US doing anything, says, well, what about all these other polluters? Well, that resource is spread across the globe beautifully. And I mean, Australia alone could probably power the entire East. Now you're talking about solar panels over a big chunk of land. And are there going to be issues? Yes. And water is also an issue. You have to find the water to break the water, to put it back together again. But it could be done. And the beauty of it is it's immediate. It can be done at scale. And it doesn't have to be situated at the whim of 10,000 parochial interests that are all fighting for turf. You can put this, if the technology is figured out, anywhere. And I would say to anybody watching this, any students, I think this is going to happen. I mean, it may not be the solving issue. There's a lot of people, they're the solving solution. There are a lot of people with a lot of smart ideas, but you have to go back to those graphs and say, if we're going to actually combat this, it has to be something massive. To sort of dork around with electric cars that are 50% coal anyway, or 20%, I don't think is the answer.
And scalable, right? Yeah.
What's that?
And scalable.
Yes, this is scalable. I mean, it would be, there's a lot of solar panels, there'd be wind. Honestly, it would work with nuclear too. Instead of taking nuclear and going to the grid, you could just take a nuclear plant and make hydrogen like crazy. All you need is a cheap source of non-CO2 emitting electricity. So yes, nuclear would be absolutely a part. And then you could reduce that footprint a lot. But even if you don't do it,
I know Bill's going to ask a question in the Q&A. He's going to say, well, won't it all blow up? So we're going to hold that question, Bill.
yeah, okay. And I'm just about done because I've soapboxed here long enough. But here's the other thing too. When you try and do something disruptive like this, you can't disenfranchise a whole bunch of people without costs, you know. And so I'm going to show you something in a minute and then end my presentation. I was going to do one more quiz.
None of the above.
Oh, no. In fact, you put it in there. Winston Churchill made a lot of really good decisions, okay? But Winston Churchill's probably best decision was when he converted the British fleet from coal to oil well before World War II. Because if he hadn't done that, the whole thing would have turned the wrong way. I mean, people don't talk about that decision very much, and it was unpopular because Britain produced a lot of coal and no oil at the time, but it was disruptive and it needed to be done. I think that the existing oil and gas industry, instead of being disenfranchised, could play a major role in this, because who's good at producing and marketing and moving compressed gases around? The oil and gas industry. Who can do it offshore? Who could make it in Africa if they needed to, and put it on big ships and ship it to Europe? The oil and gas industry does that all the time. And instead of being disenfranchised, they know how to do it. They know how to move this stuff around. They know about pressures. They know about all kinds of stuff. So, you know, it would be an opportunity if the policymakers jumped on this to take a huge infrastructure and just reform it slightly. So if I were king, that's what I would do. And I think this could be done fast and at scale. And it would be disruptive and transformative, and I don't think we're going to get there the other way. So that kind of concludes my presentation. There I am, a proud Michigan Tech grad, pretending to know what I'm doing in that picture. You know, and I will say this: Hollywood can make you look good, and I appreciate it. So that's it. That's what I got, and I'd be very happy to take questions on any part of that.
All right, so I'm gonna take over for just a moment, and I'm gonna share my own screen and present. So thank you so much, Marty. I learned, you know, I got to listen to you in rehearsal where I learned a little bit, and then I learned a lot more tonight. So
Great.
Thank you, Marty. It's wonderful just to learn something new every Monday night. I do want to thank our sponsors again. So the Seibold family and Todd Ho, or Howe, I'm not sure I'm saying your name correctly. So I would like to plug the next, so we have 2 left for the season. The first one is Monday, November 30th, right after Thanksgiving. Again, we start at 5:45. This is about modeling climate change and coastal hazards on the Great Lakes. And this is featuring Pengfei Jue, who is a professor in civil environmental engineering and the director of the Numerical Geophysical Fluid Dynamics Lab in the Great Lakes Research Center, with co-host Guy Meadows, who was one of our summer speakers. And then our very last Husky Bites of the season is our dear Ray Shaw, Dr. Ray Shaw, who's a physics faculty member. He's going to be talking about why, as happened today, we had a couple of inches of Lake Superior in our driveways. And by the way, it's about 25 degrees, or at least it was about an hour ago. And we do have snow on the ground, which is a big change from last week. Yeah. The season will officially start January 25th. And I will keep you posted if we have any other sessions in between December 7th and then. I do want to update you once again about that we have a whole bunch, I believe, well, we're in the middle of getting a whole bunch of graduate certificates approved. So what is a graduate certificate? It's a group of 3 courses together that together, you know, it's 9 credits and it's a certificate. And so you earn a credential. So you can earn a credential in resilient water infrastructure or water resources modeling. These are 7 different certificates out of the Department of Civil Environmental Engineering, which I mentioned to you before. If you're interested, just send an email to engineering@mtu.edu. We will follow up with information soon. So the great news is the second set of 7 has been approved, and these include a whole bunch out of mechanical engineering, engineering mechanics, as well as one from biomedical engineering and one from GMES, the Geological and Mining Engineering Sciences Division. So I'm going to read these names off real fast. Aerodynamics, computational fluid dynamics, dynamic systems, geoinformatics, medical devices and technologies, quality engineering, and vehicle dynamics. All right, so there's my commercial. I got it, you know, it's my job. I also encourage you to start loading up your questions in the Q&A because we're gonna turn to them in just a second. We will take questions. I do want to give a huge shout out to 182 donors who since the beginning of the pandemic have given more than $64,000 to the Michigan Tech Annual Scholarship Fund, which is when people sponsor Husky Bites, 100% of the donations go to that. And so thank you everyone for your support of Michigan Tech in a pandemic, that is Michigan Tech students in a pandemic. All right, I am going to stop sharing screen and let's see. So Bill, are you pulling up the Q&A?
Yes, I do.
So, are you guys still seeing my screen or have I stopped that?
You're not sharing.
I'm still sharing?
You're not sharing.
Okay, perfect. That's what I wanted. Okay, so Marty, we had more than 200 participants, and so that's I think broken our records, almost broken our record because we had a lot for the one that was focused on hockey. So Bill, do you want to pull up the first question?
Well, let's see. There's one of them is what happened to the curse of Civil War gold show that you were affiliated with? It's likely to return.
It might, but the network didn't like it, and the network is almighty when it comes to that, so it got canceled. The guys in the show though are just as invigorated as ever. They're not giving up. They made a pretty good case.
Is that right?
Yeah.
So here's one. I have a theory that the gold used to be on Oak Island, but it is no. Just lost that all of a sudden. Where did it go? Sorry. But no longer. If you don't find anything, will you be satisfied with knowing you contribute a lot to the island's history, both in what really happened, but also in adding your own adventures to it?
Well, satisfied is kind of a trick word there, isn't it? I mean, you satisfied?
Yeah.
No, I wouldn't be satisfied, but would I feel good about it? Yes. And we already have. I mean, I feel best right now, and this person who asked that question probably is familiar with it. I feel best because for my brother, it's already real. Something happened on that island way out of kilter with what history would suggest. So, you know, would I be satisfied with that? No, I wouldn't be satisfied, but I'd be happy with it. And so I guess I'm kind of mincing words, but that's how I feel.
Yeah. Sure. Another,
Right, so-
Patrick, oh, go ahead, Janet. Yeah. So he says, Marty, what do you think is the most intriguing
All right,
find?
this question's from Walt.
Oops.
What do you most intriguing find with regards to your Oak Island findings?
You know what? It's something that we found out this year, so I can't say that. So the most intriguing find out thing happened this year to me. Prior to that, it's kind of a toss up. It's anything, and now there's a bunch of it. There's a bunch of things that say that a lot happened prior to 1795. The money pit was discovered in 1795, and we now have data, lots of data that pushes that date way back, that there were people on that island doing something unrecorded long before that. So I would say the most significant find is the fact of the many finds that say that. And the one I'm not going to tell you about.
So Marty, this is my question before I go to the next. What do you think is so special about the island that this occurred?
You're going to have to say it again, Bill. You cut out. Say it again, please.
Oh, I said, this is my question. What do you think is so special about that piece of land that all this occurred?
That's exactly the point. Other than a fairly unique geology, nothing. But here's an interesting point. It's the same deal to me about life in the universe. You asked this, so now you're going to get my answer. Let's say life only exists on Earth. Let's say it does. And let's say that it's astronomically impossible for it to exist elsewhere. But still, the thought that why here would not really be a relevant thought, because wherever it happened would be the why here place, if that makes any sense to you. So I think Oak Island is special because whatever happened there, not because it has any strategic significance or anything like that. I think asking that question is just because this was the island they picked, whoever they were and whatever they wanted to hide, except for the geology. The geology is pretty unique.
All right, I call the next question. This is a question
Okay.
from a current Michigan Tech student and a huge fan of the show. So this is from Justin. What brought me to Michigan Tech, among other things, was the offering of a railroad minor. Railroads, especially passenger rail and rail transit, are especially interesting to me, and I would like to work in the industry one day. What role, Marty, do you see mass transit playing to reduce emissions, and to what scale should a system be implemented, such as a nationwide electric high-speed rail system, or even a hyperloop system?
Or a hydrogen-powered rail system, don't forget. I think rail has been underutilized for a long time. I think rail is excellent. I think to give up those rail passages that we have would be really dumb. We need to move stuff around. I mean, you look at the numbers and it's always on a, however you rate it, per pound, it's the best way, it's the lowest emission as is. But if you adopted my little deal and said, power it with hydrogen, it would be great. So I agree with whoever asked the question. The railway system in this country is underutilized. We should not give it up. This sort of thing we all did to go to cars was great, and it's a U.S. tradition and stuff, but it caused a lot of problems. So yes, I think rail was great. Will policymakers make it happen, make it stay, make it work? I don't know, but science should.
I'll take the next one. Question is, hydrogen and parentheses solar both have substantive storage issues. Can you speak to where we are with the solutions to storage?
Solar, your storage is going to be batteries, right? Or it's going to be, which is a big part of the problem, because when you look at, if you think my 8% of land was a problem with solar, when you look at the quantities of batteries, to get that percent of, to keep grid reliability and get the percent of fossil fuels down, the amount of batteries we're going to have is just absolutely mind-boggling. And there's a lot of problems with batteries. So you got batteries with hydrogen. You know, if it developed like the oil industry, you don't really have a lot of storage issues because you would be shipping it as you made it. You know, hydrogen also could end up playing a role to balance the grid, but that would probably be way out there. I would see it taking over transportation first. So anyway, the only fossil fuel that's requiring storage right now is natural gas because of winter-summer swings, right? I mean, I worked on storage fields. But oil, you don't need a lot of oil storage. I mean, you have a few tanks around for distribution and stuff. And remember, to move hydrogen around, you're going to have to liquefy it. You can't carry sufficient amounts of hydrogen pressurized to make the trip worthwhile. So it's going to be liquefied. You know, there could be solutions on storage, but I think it's going to be sort of a produce it as you need it kind of thing to make it work.
All right,
Okay.
I'm just going to interrupt. I'm going to interrupt for a second because at 7 o'clock, I always thank everyone, our audience, for joining us. So you have been with Michigan Technological University's College of Engineering and Mechanical Engineering alumnus Marty Lagina, Chair of Mechanical Engineering, Engineering Mechanics, Dr. Bill Predebon, for an evening learning about, oh my goodness, energy, law, winemaking.
Your wine.
Sustainability, I know, and then treasure hunting. And so, Marty, there's about 51 open questions. So if I'm going to make an exception, we're going to stay on to no later than 7:30. I hope that's okay with you because there's so many interesting questions. And so, Bill, thank you, everyone. And I know many of you, so there's still 164 people here. So I just want to get through as many questions as we can. So Bill, go ahead and take the next one.
Okay, well, if you find some I missed, go ahead and grab them, Janet. Marty, here's one that you might like. Marty for president.
Yeah, I like that.
He obviously likes your so he likes your solar argument. It's quite obvious.
We could make it happen. It could be done.
So here's a person I know very well. He's an alumni. Darren Mood asked you, is there a particular technical challenge holding back the insertion of H2 fuel cells into power production?
You know, for the life of me, I don't know what that is. But if you check the stocks of the fuel cell manufacturers in the last 6 to 8 months, they have all really gone. Europe, Japan, maybe not so much China, but some of the people have led the way on this whole climate initiative. I think they're tumbling to the same place that I am in the sense that, you know, they are pushing hydrogen a lot now. And you know, what has held back fuel cells? I think probably the cost. Well, actually, as I'm babbling here, two things probably. The cost of hydrogen, because it has to be cheap enough. This is America. It has to compete with gasoline, which it now can, I think, because of how cheap solar electricity is. And the other thing holding it back was it wasn't green. Most hydrogen, even today, is stripped from methane through what they call steam reformation. And so if you take methane and strip the hydrogen off, the carbon goes off as CO2. So you haven't done anything. You're kind of doing the same thing I was complaining about the grid. You're just moving the source of pollution. So until we get renewable, carbon-free hydrogen, probably that's what held back fuel cells, because in my opinion, they're great. They're really good things. That little car I showed would have a fuel cell in it.
Well, one of the things, Marty, that I'm familiar with because of some of the research going on in my department is one issue with fuel cells is water. It's a byproduct. So
Yes.
in the winter, it freezes, and once you freeze that, the cell won't function. So you have to solve that water issue and they're working on it, but that's a big problem.
Well, they figured it out with DEF somehow, you know, diesel exhaust fluid. That stuff freezes too. So
Yeah.
they figured it out for that. Look, Bill, that is perfect for your department.
Yeah, we're working on it. Several of my faculty are working on it, and it's it could.
Water as the sole effluent from a vehicle is what you call a happy problem.
Yep.
That's
That
where we
is a
want
heavy
to be.
problem. All right, I'm going to break up the technical questions. So this is a question from Heather French, class of '07. My husband and I bet every season whether this is going to be the last year, the year that you find the treasure. So tell me, should he bet high or low?
No, I can't do that. No, you mean for this season, the ones that's starting to air right now? No, I can't. They would. Treasure protectors would kill me.
No, well, she could only try here,
Yeah, so I don't blame her for trying, but we're not allowed to say more than just sort of teasing things. There's a lot happened this year. COVID, I will say this, COVID hurt us a lot from the sort of massive things we've been doing, but it also refocused our attention, and some of it turned out to be good.
Marty, here's a second-year ME student from Traverse City. He said he and his family has watched your show since season 1. One thing that we have always wondered is how much does the History Channel contribute to the Oak Island operation?
That's a really good question, and I'll tell you this. Remember I said it was a money pit? For at least the first 5 years, it was a giant money pit because they didn't contribute anything, something like that. Now they are. Now they're contributing quite a lot because it's a popular show. That's all I can say. But for the longest time, we were their message to us was, "Hey, you're doing it anyway. We just want to photograph it," and and we bought that. Can I say one other thing about that? One of the big things for my brother was that he didn't want to be on TV. I didn't want to be on TV, but it has been somewhat inspirational for young people. One of the things we're most proud about on that show is that lots of parents have said it's the only show on TV they can watch with their kids and interact with them. They're both interested. Generally that just doesn't happen. And they do talk about engineering, and they try and figure it out themselves, and they talk about the machines and the history that's interwoven. So that was one of the reasons we did it, even though we were throwing money down a pit for many years. But it's better
now. All
now.
right. I'm gonna call out the next question. So this is from Joe Corzo. He says, "Hi Marty, Joe Corzo here, your next door neighbor at Wadsworth Hall in
I
73.
remember Joe.
Great discussion. Looking forward to trying the Bel Tramonto."
Yes, Bel Tramonto, beautiful sunset. Sangiovese, which we're the only people in Michigan, in my opinion, that can grow a good Sangiovese. So nice to hear from you, Joe. I remember you well. And the great Muss was his roommate. Ask him that. I believe.
So here's one from Lyle Nelson says, fascinating. I grew up with a grandpa teaching me about hydro and the place for nuclear. He would have been in his late 90s if alive now. With how many years that some have known different ways for energy production, how do we flip the switch to ideas like hydrogen and have these gain momentum? I know what you're going to tell me, Marty.
We got to educate our policymakers.
That's what I thought you'd say, yes.
Courses in thermodynamics.
Yeah.
Because you know what, there's a groundswell now. There's political will in this country. I think, and not political will, people. There's people will in this country to do something about it, but we have to make sure the policy goes the right way. I mean, if we're going to spend all this money, and any of these solutions are going to be incredibly expensive, but it has to be worth it. And I just think, everybody has to get involved. And I think the engineering community has to take a leading role in this, because we all know how much nonsense you hear all over the place. And, people don't even understand, the difference between, say, Carnot cycle efficiency and just conversion efficiency that is, part of the process. I mean, they don't understand it. And so it's a problem. Anyway, I don't know. I'd tell whoever asked the question, get involved, push.
All right.
Yeah.
So this next question is a reflective question, Marty. It's from Richard Stevens. If you could go back to graduation from Michigan Tech, would you do anything differently in your career? And if so, what?
No, I don't think I would. I had a checked all the boxes every time. I mean, look, there were bits and pieces of it that I wish didn't happen. I mean, we had some royalty issues that weren't our fault at one time with the state of Michigan, which wasn't pleasant. You know, I know what it's like to be in the spotlight of government. It's not nice. You know, there are various incidents that if with 2020 hindsight, you would not go there. Like the old boy said, if a person knew where they were going to die, well, they wouldn't go there, right? So anyway, but no, as far as the career choices, I think I had fun. They were interesting. Made some money. No, I wouldn't change any of that.
Here's a student. What advice do you have for a high school senior that will be attending Michigan Tech in the fall of 2021?
Learn everything you can. Get grounded in the sciences, whatever fits your pistol. You know, and I just think it's an excellent choice. I mean, it's good background for anything to be, and not just, I mean, for me, it was mechanical engineering. I mean, you teach a lot of things up there, Bill, but it's all grounded in science. That's what Michigan Tech is. I mean, I think I would say to that student, you made a good choice. Try and find the discipline that makes sense for you. And in that vein, I did well at Michigan Tech, but I got off into electrical engineering, and I realized I was hopeless at electrical engineering. I just didn't get it. And so when I started building wind farms, I had to get people involved that did understand that. So that's the kind of thing I'm talking about. Find what interests you, but I think a technical education is great.
Oh, so we're going to go to something lighthearted now. What was your best winter carnival memory?
Well, a lot of those winter carnival memories are a little foggy, if you know what I mean. Best winter carnival memory. I guess that we had a house like those guys that I showed, you know, and we were kind of derelicts, and you know, weren't associated with any formal fraternity, but we called ourselves that. And I won't explain because you don't want it.
No, this is a family-friendly
Yeah, this is a
show.
family show. Right? But we were kind of derelicts. But one night at Winter Carnival, we decided we'd make a statue, and we did. Just outside our house, we did a giant beer keg. Go figure. And that was really kind of fun. You know, I mean, by morning we had a giant beer keg, and you know, pretty much drank a lot of beer in the process. So I guess that would be.
But that was back when the drinking age was 18. I'm just pointing that
That's
out.
correct.
Yeah.
That's correct.
Yeah. So
Broomball was really fun too.
broomball is a fun. Did you ever practice as a lawyer?
Not really. I do a lot. I do a lot of legal work in my own companies because I can read the documents. But the lawyers have this axiom that a lawyer who represents himself as a fool for a client. You know, the law changes a lot, but being grounded in it again, you know, understanding the principles, being able to read a contract, I do a lot of that, but I don't think I ever got paid to do any legal work. I have a bar card, I could, but I don't.
Yeah, we were just wondering about all those trick questions.
Sorry about that. Try to have fun.
So here's a question about Oak Island regarding your show, The Curse of Oak Island. Is there a point where you will stop searching for treasure, or will you continue until you find the treasure?
No, my brother and I have talked about this one a lot, and it's two things. If it becomes more of a burden than it is fun, that would be one thing that would stop us. And Rick always says this: if we aren't moving the needle anymore, in other words, if we're not revealing things at a acceptable rate, chasing it and getting clues, then it might be time to hand the baton to somebody else. There are plenty of people who would take that baton. It's never been an issue on Oak Island.
So there's a couple of storage questions. One of them was related to, you know, what if we could use all the batteries on cars to store energy? And then
Yes.
the other one is hydrogen and solar both have substantive storage issues. Can you speak to where we are with solutions to storage?
Well, like I say, storage, if you did the hydrogen deal on a massive scale, I think it would be use it as you produce it. I mean, hydrogen would go off in refrigerated trucks. It would go to gas stations, just like oil does now. There's not a lot of oil storage in the United States. you have Cushing, you have you have some of these hubs where there's a fair amount, but I think it would end up being produced and brought out to the market and used. Solar, of course, the only way to store it would be to make hydrogen or some secondary fuel or batteries. And yes, it's a good idea. There's merit. And remember, I'm not saying that, I was trying to show that it could all be done with hydrogen. It almost certainly won't all be done with hydrogen, but in order to take bites out of this thing, you got to start thinking aggressively. Yes, the grid with a bunch of cars tied to it at night, we're effectively there, a bit of the storage, that'll help balance it. But look at those numbers. We're still 60% fossil fuels after working at this for a long time. And my friends in the utility business tell me this problem is not going to get easier.
Mm.
So yeah, cars as a distributed battery system, yeah, I don't think it's going to move the dial that much.
Yeah, so Bill, do you remember what your lab was working on? Or Marty, do you remember what you were doing back in Bill's lab?
Yes, he had a finite elements program, and I was helping him debug his program, and I didn't really know what I was doing, and I kept telling him that, but he would teach me, and then I think I helped move the dial. Right? It was a finite elements program.
That's right. It was to model things that blow explosive systems,
Yeah.
that I was doing when I was at the Army Research Lab before I came to Michigan Tech. So I continued that.
Janet, do you know Bill is a boxer? Did you know that?
We have had that conversation. Apparently, apparently that's what he did in his junior year at Notre Dame.
I'm here to tell you, I think he was probably very effective. As gentle a guy as he is, he came to my house where I have a gym. There was a punching bag hanging from the ceiling. And he goes up to this punching bag, old gentle Bill Predebon, and he transformed. I mean, all of a sudden, he was a different guy, and I felt sorry for that bag. He the heck out of that bag. Do you remember
Was it one of the little bags or like a big old?
No, one of those big bags, and it was taking some monster punches. It was that's true.
Yeah, I do remember that. Yeah, you had quite the gym. Yeah.
Well, and I think Bill's nose is a little off center.
Yeah, well,
it is. I have a deviated septum. You're right. And it occurred from boxing.
No, I wouldn't want to box him. No, I saw what that might end up being, and it wasn't pretty.
Oh gosh.
Well, I did win my weight class. So I used to use that when people would want to beat me up or something. I say, my hands are licensed, so be careful.
Well, I've seen it. It was impressive.
That's an interesting story. So do you know, Marty, this is Bill's last year as being chair, and
that's a sad
he's
thing,
put in his retirement papers. I know.
Michigan Tech owes him a huge debt of gratitude because he's been great.
Yeah, I know. Didn't you mention if he ever gets cut or something, he bleeds Michigan Tech blood?
Yeah, if he gets cut, he bleeds Michigan Tech. Little Huskies flow right out of his veins. You know what, Bill? I do have a plan or an idea for one more senior project too. Just the saying, because it's real.
Okay.
I'll tell you it right now. Why not? Why don't we have hydrogen fueling outdoor grills? I mean, in California, they've banned them. You can't have propane grills anymore. So why not? That'd be a small enough project for somebody to work on. There are logistical issues. I don't know how much you can get in a cylinder. There are safety issues. There's all kinds of stuff, but it'd be a great project. So now
let's talk about that later.
Yeah,
but speaking of that, people raise the issue. So this summer, devil's advocate, as you know. So how are you going to solve the problem when you got this hydrogen in a tank and they're worried it would explode?
Yeah, I think that's a big non-issue. We talked about this a little bit.
I know. What's the answer?
I know. But let me just put it to you this way: to every engineer watching this right now, if you started from scratch, would you rather put a highly volatile liquid fuel that can splatter and spray all over the place and catches fire inside a tank with a thickness of that much, or would you have a cylinder, a pressure cylinder that probably could take a direct hit from a high-powered rifle and wouldn't break? And further, look at the two different contents of the two different tanks. If the one leaks, it goes straight up. Hydrogen goes straight up. It doesn't splash all over the ground. It doesn't burn your clothes. It doesn't do any of that stuff. It's actually this. It has been used a fair amount, and its safety record is really pretty good. Again, that's an engineering problem, and you know what?
Yep.
Produce the engineers who can do that.
And after all,
And
the Hindenburg was a balloon with a
Hindenburg had
flammable.
even less of a deal than. Plus, it was supposed to have helium in it. I mean, putting hydrogen in that was a very bad idea.
Yeah.
What's your favorite city from Todd, Marty?
Favorite city?
Houghton, Traverse City, and Oak Island.
Boy, that's a tough one. I like Traverse City a lot. I like Nova Scotia a lot, but I like some of the Italian cities too. I've traveled in Italy. I'm actually an Italian citizen as well as U.S. So
Oh,
I like
cool.
Italy a lot. I don't think I could pick a favorite, but I do like Traverse City a lot. I could, I still live here because I like it.
Yep. Oh, there's
So-
so
so-
many more questions. Let's just pick
Yeah.
like 4 more questions, Bill, and then we're going to wrap it up.
Okay.
Okay, well, here's one that's kind of interesting. It's from Robert and Lorraine Clem. Have read Gavin Menzies' book on Chinese visiting Nova Scotia in 1421. Were you aware of that, Marty?
Yes, I am aware of that book. Yes, and
Okay.
I'll give you a spoiler because they hinted at it last time, but that's a very interesting question because we did find this year an ancient Chinese coin on Oak Island. There's a spoiler.
Oh boy.
Okay.
Oh boy.
Mm. Does it date? Can you date the coin?
Classic professor. Yes, we had an expert look at it, and it's very
Okay.
way older than you would possibly think to be on
I
Oak
see.
Island.
All right, and so Adam, I think Marty's answered this question. Adam asks, do you realistically see the day when hydrogen would replace natural gas as a residential heating fuel?
Yes,
Yeah.
I don't see that as a very much of a technical problem at all. You have hydrogen embrittlement in steel pipelines, but that's handleable. In the UK right now, they're injecting hydrogen and not having to change the burners in an experiment Leeds University is running. I think they can inject like up to, different engineers have different numbers, but 10-15% hydrogen as is.
Mhm.
So you can cut the natural gas that way. But yeah, I don't see that as at all an insurmountable problem. I mean, the infrastructure involved is huge, but
Mhm.
the oil industry did all this in the last 100 years, right? We found the fuel, so then they put the refineries there, and then they figured out the trucks, and then they figured out the pipelines, and then we all run on it. So now we're even better technologically. So that's a long answer to a simple question. Yes, I would. And now your house you might have a fuel cell, right? Because you could make your electricity and you could use the waste heat. That might be the way it goes. But getting the hydrogen to your house, why not?
All right, so I'm going to ask one more question, and then Bill will ask the very last one. So this is from a high school student who's going to major in computer engineering, and he and his friend have been thinking about energy, and they wanted to know your opinions on nuclear fusion. They've seen a tour of a research facility, and they were saying the technology works, but is not efficient enough yet. If this technology produces more energy than it consumes, do you think this could positively impact the whole energy equation?
Sure. Again, remember, I have an inherent bias against the grid, so I would think, again, you need to make some other fuel with it. But fusion has always been the holy grail, right, of the nuclear people. I took one course, nuclear reactor engineering in Michigan Tech, and I still remember some of it. But yeah, fusion would be great. It so far has been elusive. And I haven't kept up with it, but that could easily be part of a picture, a transformative picture. Yes.
So
All
here's
right, and someone has asked how they buy wine, and I'm gonna post a link to the Mary Vineyards so that everybody can
Good
see
stuff.
it. Do you sell online?
Yes.
Okay, I'm gonna try to post a chat thing with a link there. But Bill, go ahead and take one more question and wrap up the evening, please.
Okay, it says it's anonymous. Battery people sometimes refer to what is called a Ragoon plot. You probably know that. Can you comment about the position of fuel cells on the plot in comparison to other sources of energy? Are they far or close to the internal combustion engines? Do you think that that even matters? If it matters, how do you see the fuel cells catching up? None of the batteries are well on the plot either. If that makes it a better question.
Yeah, the short answer to that is I don't know. I mean, I've not looked at them as in a comparison sense, and I'm going to look foolish here, but I'm not familiar with that concept. I'm not familiar with it. I think fuel
Oh,
cells.
I'll have to,
Yeah, go ahead.
no, yeah, we could get you that. Yeah. On that plot, gasoline is so, energy has a high energy density. It shows up pretty well on that plot. That's what he's referring to.
Well, hydrogen, 1 kilogram of hydrogen has the same BTU content as 1 gallon of gasoline, conveniently so. But if you put that hydrogen in a fuel cell vehicle, an internal combustion engine, what, maybe 32% thermal efficiency, maybe something like that.
Yeah, that's that. We can do better, but that's right.
Yeah. Okay. So in that range, whereas a fuel cell 60, so and then you get the waste heat to heat the car. So if a kilogram of hydrogen is about the same as a gallon of gasoline, then it can be double the price delivered. Gasoline could be economic right now. That's the little mnemonic I carry around in my head. It's got a lot higher energy density than batteries for weight.
So since you need so much water, right, that you have the oceans, but they're salt, you'd have the cost of
The
desal.
amount of water, Bill, I've done the equations on water. In Arizona, New Mexico, it would be an issue. In Michigan, it would not be an issue. The amount of water, actually, if you do the material balance on it, it's not that much. There's so much. No, that water's not an issue.
Oh, I wasn't thinking Michigan. We're going to try to keep, Lake Superior, but I was thinking.
No, it wouldn't. It wouldn't be even a dent. I mean, we could take it up afterwards, but yeah, I think it would be more of a political issue than a really.
That's really what I meant. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yes, you're going to get people really upset about that. But if you look at the numbers like we do, what they're irrigating in the desert Southwest is using way more water than. They use those center pivot irrigation. What, 10% hits the ground, the rest just goes away. And the nice thing about hydrogen is that the water does come back, not in the same place, but it's water, then it's fuel, then it's water again.
Water, yeah, absolutely. I think it's more just wondering because people are so protective. I don't know what they. Yes. You have to show them the data, like you said.
Yeah, you would.
All right, so. I'm just gonna first of all, thank everyone. So Marty, thank you. I promised we would stop at 7:15 and then of course here it is 7:30. Thank you so much for sharing your words of wisdom. I like the principle of requiring anybody in politics to take a course in thermodynamics. Boy, the world would sure be a better place. Bill, thank you so much for all your work in MEME across the years, and it's nice to see you two together after all these years, and to kind of connect with a mechanical engineering graduate who's gone on to do so many amazing things. Everyone, you are invited. We have 2 more webinars coming up the next 2 Mondays. So, I from the bottom of my heart, I wish you a safe and blessed Thanksgiving week with your family, and I wish all the best for everyone out there. This has probably been one of the most well-attended Husky Bites. Thank you, everyone, and thank you, Marty. Thank you, Bill.
You're very welcome. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
See you, everybody. Stay safe.
See you, Marty.
See you, Bill.